Hey everyone, it's Rob here from Octagon, and yeah, welcome to our second Divi UI challenge. But our first time that we've done a recording for it, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to walk you through how I've built and for this week a pricing section. And what you can see here on the screen is what we're going to make. So a whole bunch of it is sort of cool, based off sort of the standard settings that you can achieve using Divi's page builder, with a couple of little cool CSS tricks, which I'm going to walk you through. So this is what we're going to make, and let's get into it. So I'm just going to go to new. Let's go new page. I'm going to use the backend builder for this demo, but obviously a lot of the settings and everything apply if you're using the front end builder as well. So let's just use the Divi builder. And I'm just going to open up the preview window so we can, toggle back and forth and see how things are going. What I am going to do is I'm going to just for the sake of when we're previewing this, I'm just going to get blank page, because what that does is it just removes the menu and the footer, which can get in the way a little bit when we're just back and forth things. So cool. So we've got a standard section here in the Divi builder. We're going to insert a column. Insert a row, I should say, and we're going to insert a one column row, and then insert modules, and we're going to insert pricing tables. And one thing to keep in mind when you're doing pricing tables is when you're doing the design tweaks for the individual tables, and in our example we're doing 3. It's a good idea to do it in this level, because what you can do is, obviously when you add a new pricing table, you can then go and do all the design settings in there, but these settings apply only to that single pricing table. But if you do it back over here at the sort of the main page, then the settings that you apply here apply to all of the pricing tables that are created. So that's kind of a good thing to know. So we've got our first one here. I'm just going to click the settings button, and we're not going to make it featured. Let's just call this option 1. Subtitles. This is a subtitle currency. Let's just go dollars per week. Price is 29. Button URL, we'll just put a hash in there for now. Button text is order now. Content, I'm just going to chuck some lorem ipsum in there. So we'll just grab this little paragraph here. Lorem2.com is just a little handy little website you can grab placeholder text from. One of many, but it's sort of the one that I always in the back of my mind. Cool, so let's just save that, save and exit, hit preview, and we'll have yeah, cool, fantastic. All right, so let's just jump back into the settings again, and let's look at these advanced design settings and start moving through them. Table header background color. I'm actually going to set to transparent. So what I've done there is just, whenever I'm doing transparent, I always select white and then move the slider right down to 0. So that 255, 255, 255 is the code for white, and then the 0 just gives us a 0 opacity. Show bullet, I'm going to turn that off. Whoops. Send to list items, yes. Cool. Let's look at some fonts. So I've been really liking this Able font recently, so let's go with that one. Let's give it all caps. Header font size 22. Let's keep it for now, and then we'll check out what it looks like. Header text color. So we're going to have a dark background when we get to that. So we'll set our color to white, our font color, I should say. Header letter spacing. Able's quite a tall and narrow font. Oops. So I am actually going to give it, let's just start with a 2 pixel spacing. Header line height, leave that for now. Subheader, let's find Able again. Subheader font size 16, that sounds fine. Subheader text color, cool. Let's select white again. Letter spacing, we'll just leave that as is for the subheader. Line height, leave it as. Currency frequency, We're basically just doing the same thing for each of these little zones. Letter spacing will leave, line height will leave, price. Okay, I feel like I've missed it. There we go, I didn't miss a color for the currency. So I'll select white there as well. Price font, able, font size, 80's pretty big, but let's just leave it for now. We might reduce it later. Go white. Letter spacing will leave, price line will leave, body font, able, leave it 14. That may be a touch small, but we'll have a look. Body text color, let's set to white. Leave those. Background color. Okay, cool. Let's pick our nice dark color. We'll just, it's easiest to start with jet black, and we'll just move that up. And from what I recall, I think I had about 2.6 recurring, something like that. Use border. Now I'm going to actually turn yes for border. The reason I'm going to do that is because I want to remove it, funnily enough. If you have it turned, if you leave that set to no, from what I recall, the pricing table actually defaults to a light border, but if we turn it on to yes, we have the controls over the border basically. If I set the border width to 0, that effectively moves the border. A little bit of a roundabout way of achieving it, but it gets the job done. Use custom styles for button, yes. Button text size, I'm going to go 14. Button text color, we have that yellow buttons, so we're going to have a white text. Button background color. Now I'm just going to duck back over to here, and because I'm going to grab the yellow. Oops, that's obviously not correct. I think I've saved it in here. I just want to grab the same yellow because I liked what I had earlier. There it is. Save. Just trying to guess what it is. So let's bring it back and just paste that into there. Button border width. Now a cool little, actually what I'll show, I'll just hit the little preview. Hopefully this works for me. Occasionally I have issues with previewing on my local machine. Great. One cool little, let's call it a Divi hack that I realized just recently, and it's something that I used to achieve using CSS, but I often like having my buttons with much more padding than what the Divi by default allows, and because there's no padding options available for Divi buttons in the settings, yeah, like I said, I used to achieve the result using CSS. But what I realized just earlier is we can actually just add a large border to our buttons to give this sense of a larger button. Obviously, it only works when your background color and your border color are the same color, but you'll see what I mean shortly. So if we just close this again, where are we? So we've got my background color for the button as yellow, and I'm going to set the border color as the same yellow. And if I just set the border width to something like 10, which is 10 pixels, you'll see we get this much bigger button, which looks, in my opinion, looks really, really good. So like I said, you can do, and it's probably maybe better to use CSS sometimes to do this, but we achieve a really good effect in the same way, just using a large border for it, which is great. So let's go back out here, button border radius. I'm going to set that to 2, button letter spacing. I am going to set this to 2 as well, because I know I'm going to reset the font to able again, and I'm also going to all caps it. You could have the icon if you want. I'm actually going to remove the icon. Button hover text color. It should retain white anyway, but it's always safe to just set it manually. So that's our text color. Button hover background color. So I'm just pasting in the hex code for that yellow again, but for this one I'm actually going to just make it a richer yellow. So there's a slight transition on a hover, and obviously we need to set that same rich yellow for the border. Border radius, we set the initial to 2. Oops. It's slightly annoying how it does that, but we'll work around it. So set that to 2 as well, but a hover, button hover letter spacing, I think we had set to 2 as well. Okay, let's hit that, see what we're looking at. Looking good. Okay, so the couple of things that we've done here, just using the, obviously all of this we've done using the standard settings. So a couple of things I want to do using some simple CSS is I want to add a bit more padding to the outside of the pricing tables. I also want to add a drop shadow to the button as well, which would be cool. As you can see there, you can see that slight color transition on the button hover, but we're going to add a drop shadow to that as well. I think that's all we're going to do for now. So I'll just close that. So first of all, let's jump over to custom CSS. Actually, no, what I do need to... Okay, let's do the button first. Let's do the drop shadow on the button. So I believe that's possibly even the last item, nearly, pricing button. Writing drop shadow or in CSS Box Shadow can be a bit fiddly. You have to work with a bunch of things called vendor prefixes, which basically just means that, you know, if you're viewing within multiple browsers, you're going to get a consistent look and everything like that. And it's basically it's a bit fiddly, and it takes too long to stuff around and write it from scratch. So I often just if you do a quick Google on CSS Box Shadow, you can find a box shadow generators, and this is the one I always sort of end up at, csmatic.com/box shadow, and you've got a bunch of settings and toggles here, and then you get your code that you can just copy and paste. It's a good idea to obviously have a look at what it's creating so you understand what it's doing. If you've got a good head around it, it's much easier to do this way. So what I'm going to do is, actually it's good because this is what I had from before. Horizontal and vertical lengths to set, blur radius, spread, there's my shadow color. Great, so if I just copy that and go back over to our pricing button, should have a little shadow on our button, which would look nice. Great, perfect. So let's just hit save and exit. It's always nice to check like this. Looking great. Now, let's quickly duplicate our 3 options. Let's have another quick look. All right, there we go. We've got our 3 columns now. And as you can see, we mentioned that we were going to work with the padding a little bit because, in my opinion, this looks a little bit too bunched up. I want to give that each column, or each table, I should say, as it's defined in the Divi, a little bit more space, particularly on the top and bottom. So if we go back into our settings over here, now I believe we're going to have to do this at an individual column level. So just to make it easier, let me get out of it again. I'm actually going to delete our duplicated ones, and I can do the CSS once and then duplicate the CSS, which is probably easiest. So I am currently in the custom CSS for a single column. The main element, let's give it some padding. So padding, I'm just going to go 40 pixels all around just to start with, and let's have a look at that. While we're here, we've just duplicated our first column. Let's just do this, option 2. Let's give it a different price as well. And if you go to design settings for this second column and scroll down to where our background is, here we go. Now our initial one was, we know was, if you recall, was 26. So I'm just going to do that. Let's have a quick look and see what it looks like. One of the strengths of the obviously the front end editor is that you can see the changes, so you're doing a lot less toggling back and forth, but that looks pretty good. Let's go to our third column, option 3. Make this one 119 a week. and our background color, which is down here. So just click black. That might be all right. Let's have a look. We're basically just looking at it. Yeah, great. Progressive darkening. Actually, that might be a bit too dark. Although maybe I want to darken the middle one. No, I think I'll lighten the third column. So not quite that dark. Where are we? Advanced design settings. Here we go. It's going to be marginal difference, but cool. That looks... I feel like I want a touch lighter. A little bit pedantic of me, I guess, but I guess it's how you end up with designs that you like. You play until you're happy. Let's do that. Just remembered one other little bit of CSS I want to apply to the buttons. So we did the shadow before. So if we go back over to custom CSS, go down to our button. There's our box shadow that we applied. I also want to make the buttons wider. Now let me just actually quickly refresh. Cool, so our padding's looking good and our color, our different background colors is looking good. I actually want to make these buttons here. So the button width is basically defined by the content. There's padding around the content, so that's how big it is. If we had fewer words, the button would be smaller. If we had more words, the button would be bigger. But I want the button to sit much wider regardless of the quantity of words within there. So what I am going to do is back to here, go to the settings for the pricing table, custom CSS, down to our button field. This is where our drop shadow is. I'm going to give it a, now I could set width, but it's probably better to give it a minimum width rather than just a straight width. So that's min width and 80%. Now, when you're doing things like this, it's always important to check your different screen sizes. So I'll show you the easiest way to do that in a moment. See, that looks cool. I reckon that looks great. And then you just drag like that, and you can drag it right in to see what happens, to make sure your things don't break and don't look wrong. So that's looking really good. And the last thing I'd like to do is I'm just going to add an image background to our section in general. So if you upload an image, this is just a photo that I grabbed from Unsplash. So unsplash.com is a great website where some really good photographers share and effectively open source their photos. So the photos that you find on here are completely, I'm not exactly sure if the license is GPL, but basically the licensing for them means that you can use them for anything and anyone can use them for commercial projects. They can be edited and modified and everything like that. So, the equivalent of full open source. So yeah, there's hundreds of, thousands of photos here and they're really great. So I grabbed, this photo here from that, just resized it because often the photos are quite large files, down to 1920 by 1280. Compressed it a little bit as well. Uploaded it, so I can set that as background. Hit preview. There we go. So I reckon that looks really, really nice and achieves 95% of it with just the settings with the Divi builder, and that final 5% with just some very simple custom CSS. So I hope you like week 2 of our Divi UI challenge. Definitely tune in next week for week 3. We don't know yet what we're going to make, but hopefully it's something really nice. See you then.